Now, as we do for each of our tests of our 3DSs, we did a battery test. So you can see we've got them set up in our family space, and as the kids have moved on to play a bit of Just Dance, and our cat makes an appearance as the clock goes round to 1 o'clock. They're all still going strong, none of them are flashing yet. That original 3DS starts flashing red and it goes. Both the 3DS XL and then almost immediately the new 3DS. But the best of them was still that 2DS. Welcome to Family Gamer TV. Now today we want to talk about this, the new 3DS and new 3DS XL. We've really been enjoying it. We've had it for a while in the family. Now we're getting ready for our proper review, but what we want to look at first is the specs of the console. What's different, what's the same, what stands out when you first hold it. This is our hands-on early preview of the new 3DS. So here we are, the new unit in our hands. Now for the first thing is to understand what is different about it, and I think the way we approach this is by noticing what's physically different. So if we open it up, you can see already the buttons. Now a lot of people will be familiar with this, these changes on the new 3DS, but if you're not, there's this analog nub which essentially acts like a second circle stick. Having an analog control there, so I can control the menus. It's not quite as responsive as this, you haven't got as much movement, but certainly it gives you an analog control over the system and could be used for a camera, and it does that while not ruling out people who've already got a second circle stick adapter, and also leaving the buttons in the same place, which I think is relatively important. We have the volume setting up here on the side rather than down the side here or at the front, and the 3D section slider here. The circle stick feels relatively the same. D-pad feels a little bit smoother to my fingers. At the front here, we have the cartridge slot, headphones, of course, the stylus, and then the stylus itself I wasn't hugely impressed with. It's slightly smaller, sort of plasticky version of the stylus compared to some of the other styluses we've had in other models which have had a metal shaft. Now you've got new shoulder buttons, ZR and ZL, which new games will be able to use alongside the normal shoulder buttons. Again, you see that volume there. We're back round to the front. Now on the front and back we have new removable face plates. So the front one's quite easy to remove, just clips off, clips back on, and the back one you just need to take off these two screws to do it. And in here, underneath here, this is where the SD card goes, which at first it seems a bit weird. You have to unscrew the unit to change an SD card, but with a DS really you only ever have one. You want to get a nice chunky SD card, the micro SD, in there so you can use it. In the hands, it feels really nice. Now some really attention to detail here in particular, which you might not notice straight away. There's a little cutout here on the hinge, which means that your thumb, when it sits on the unit, just fits there really nicely, sort of naturally gravitates towards there, gives your positioning to be right in the same place every time on that analog nub. And in the same way on the back, it's got this, you see where my finger is there, this little divot that's cut out for the stylus, but equally that serves very nicely as a place to put your fingers, and it has that sort of feel of ergonomics to it, I think, that reminds me of that original GameCube adapter. So you go, quite a big iteration in how it sort of feels and the sort of quality. There's a real attention to detail, a complete commitment to symmetry, whereas in the original 3DS it was a little bit more clunky, a little bit more angular, and not that same attention to detail as we saw there. So some things different on one side to the other, but still a nice unit, and equally on the 3DS XL, a little bit smoother, but not that super commitment to absolute symmetry. It's not quite as sort of as luxury a product as the new 3DS feels. And to my mind, to set these to one side, it's a difference that we saw previously coming from our old DSs, the DS Fat, as some call it, the original DS unit. There's a big change from there to the DS Lite, which was a real shift, sort of shiny case, Pokemon version here. but that was very different to that original DS, and it feels similar that as we move from the original DS here to the new 3DS, you have that similar sort of change. You can see the size is slightly bigger compared to that original 3DS, but the screens themselves as well. I've seen some reviews saying the screen sizes are the same, but it's quite clear that on the new 3DS, the standard ones, these screens are a little bit bigger here, and the 3DS XL, I think the screen sizes do stay the same. And of course we should mention how it compares to the 2DS. There's a massive difference coming from that 2DS look and feel, very sort of plasticky Fisher-Price real kids toy, to this sort of high-end feel of the 3DS, the new 3DS. Interestingly, some of the features around this won't be available on the 3DS, the new 3DS XL. So that interchangeable faceplates that you can take off and replace to customize is only on the new 3DS, not the 3DS XL, which is kind of important if you're in the States, because in the US currently there's no announcement of this model, the new standard size 3DS, going on sale there. Currently this is being kept for Europe and I think for Japan. But moving in more detail, sort of looking at under the hood, what's different about the insides and the experience of playing on the new 3DS. Now that this is where it really comes into its own. So firstly, there's a faster processor, so games will load faster potentially and will run a bit smoother, but really those are there for new games that are coming out in the future. We'll be able to take advantage of them. So if we try and load this Space Raiders game on both of them at the same time, if we say go, and you should see, I think, that the new 3DS there loads quite a bit faster, and this is quite a small game, so if you had a much larger game with larger load times, again you'd see that 3DS accelerating, so there's a nice enhancement there. Where I really like the 3DS, the new 3DS in particular though, is 3D. Now I've been a fan of the 3D feature of the 3DS right from the beginning. I felt it added something to the gameplay, but even me, I would only have it switched on so now and again. I'd enjoy it for a while, and then I think I would tend to switch it off because it didn't make your eyes work a bit harder. But now, if you notice on the top screen here of the new 3DS, you have a little infrared transmitter. Now this is because the top camera is being used to do a super stable version of the 3D option. So when it's switched on, the 3DS searches, you probably can't see me past the camera at the moment, searches for your face and does a lot of extra work to lock on so that you don't have to keep moving into the right sort of frame to get one 3D on each eye. The 3DS is doing that for you, so you don't have to work as hard. And equally, in low light, this little infrared transmitter switches on, and in the dark you can see that switch on and switch off. And when the 3D is not quite in sync, it will switch on so it can see your eyes, much like Kinect on the Xbox does, to project an infrared ray at you and then read it back with the camera so that it can see exactly where you are, and sort of like a night vision. And that really transforms the experience of using 3D with games. You don't have to work any harder than you would a normal display, and you can leave that on. And the games I've been playing, I've essentially have left on that 3D effect pretty much for the whole time, whereas previously I would have switched between the two. So I think that is a really big advancement. Once it's locked on, it can use the accelerometers on the new 3DS to again notice if you're moving and again keep you locked in, so you can see that 3D effect really nicely. Now finally, of course, the new 3DS has built-in Amiibo support. Now this means that upcoming games will be able to read and access the Amiibo without having to use an extra peripheral, and also it's out of the box. So not only do you not just save a bit of money, so you don't have to buy something extra, but equally you can read in the Amiibos without traipsing around with an extra peripheral. So here we are, I'm going to pop it on. You'll see that it reads the Amiibo. We can remove it, and it will then give us a chance to register, and we can make our changes, and then we can save back onto it. And all we're doing is placing it on the screen there, much like we've become used to. There we are. The nickname's registered, much like we've become used to on the Wii U. So suddenly the Amiibos aren't just a Wii U thing, they're a 3DS thing. It's going to be really interesting to see how they are handled in games going forward for the new 3DS, and also how they support that with this potential peripheral for existing 3DSs. Now, as we do for each of our tests of our 3DSs, we did a battery test, which we married up the original 3DS against 3DS XL, against 2DS, against the new 3DS, to see which one of them would last the longest. We had all the power saving features switched off, we had Wi-Fi switched on, and we had the 3D switch on where it was, because we really wanted to see what was the minimum time you could expect to get from these consoles. So we'll let this run now, and I'll talk you through it. So you can see we've got them set up in our family space as my son's playing a bit of Rocksmith in the background. We've got the clock going round, started them at 11:15, and as the kids have moved on to play a bit of Just Dance and Frozen, you can see all 4 consoles still going strong and displaying the eShop. So I thought that would be a good thing to have them on to test out that Wi-Fi. They're all on the same page of eShop, just to make sure that they're absolutely fair. And our cat makes an appearance as the clock goes round to 1 o'clock. They're all still going strong, none of them are flashing yet, but you'll see as we move round into the next hour, that original 3DS takes the strain and starts flashing red, and it goes. And soon after that, maybe half an hour later I think, we have both the 3DS XL and then almost immediately the new 3DS. So doing pretty well, but the best of them was still that 2DS. Now of course the 2DS doesn't have to handle the 3D display, and so it had an advantage and maybe lasted for an extra hour. But I think that's interesting to see how they compare to each other, and the fact that really the commitment is to that standard sort of 3 or so hours of gameplay between charges. Now I'm sure there'll be a Mugen battery for this, and again we're always keen to test those out. We'll do another test of that. If you've not seen our previous battery test videos on the 3DSs and Game Boys, we've got a massive test where we essentially put every console that Nintendo made head to head to see which one would last the longest, and I think it was the original Game Boy that won. But in this case we had the original 3DS at 2 hours and 46 minutes. Next up was the 3DS XL at 3 hours and 30 minutes. Then just a couple of minutes longer, the new 3DS. And then finally, lasting longest, as I said, the 2DS. Of course, didn't have as much to do because it didn't have that 3D. 4 hours and 3 minutes. So again, showing you that the 2DS shouldn't be ruled out if you've got a young family. So talking about families, it's interesting to think, well, which would be the best iteration for your family? And again, this potentially comes down to cost. Now, the original 3DS is pretty good in this respect because it's a little bit older. You'll find them second-hand. It seemed to be pre-owned. You could pick them up for maybe around £90, which is really good value. Solid experience. You have all those features, 3D, decent battery life. You know, it's a really good, nice bit of kit. If you aren't worried about the 3D, then the 2DS is again good value. It's around £100 new. I have seen it for about 80 quid, £80 coming with Mario Kart, which is a great, really good value. And again, it's a bit more robust. So if you've got younger kids who are maybe going to drop it, you haven't got that hinge because it doesn't hinge, so it's not going to break. And then, of course, you've got the 3DS XL. Now this is more expensive, which is about 170. And I think this is what is kind of being eclipsed by the new versions, because I think that's really where I would go. So if you want to have something which is very future-proof, and it's going to stand the test of time, and is also backward compatible, so it plays all those DS games as well as all the old 3DS games, but then has the new features, the new buttons for the new games, as well as, of course, the new Amiibo functions as well. So really looking to the future. So it's hard to beat in terms of value, and they're looking around 150 for the new 3DS, and then 180 for the 3DS XL, and the decision is yours to which you go for. So there's a lot of choice there for families. Really, whichever one you go for, just make sure it's a good fit and it's got the features you want, and just make sure you know what you are and aren't getting. So on first impressions, I think the new 3DS and the 3DS XL, it takes what was a really adequate product. The 3DS, the original 3DS, was perfectly fine, but then it makes it absolutely shine. The attention to physical detail, along with upgraded features and the under the hood sort of stuff, the functionality, I'm on first impressions really impressed with. It takes it from being just a sort of maybe a toy to a real high-end luxury sort of style of handheld, and much more on a par with, say, the Vita. Perhaps the only criticism is the name. Calling it just a new 3DS means as a parent goes into a shop and says, oh, I'd like a 3DS for my son, my daughter, and they then ask, well, what do you want? Do you want a new one, or do you want a standard one, an older one? I'm not sure what the shop people would say. There's going to be a little bit of confusion there. I'd have liked to have been called maybe something like the 3DSi, or the along the lines of the change of name from DS to DS Lite, because that had a distinct name. But really that is splitting hairs, and the first impressions both in the home and in the hand is very positive. So there you go, that's our hands-on preview of the new 3DS. Really enjoying it, lots to say about it. We'll be back with a proper full review of it for you soon, but in the meantime, stay tuned to Family Gamer TV.